Good evening and welcome. This is the May 22nd, 2024 public hearing of the Land Use Commission. The City Code directs this body to hear applications for map and text amendments, special uses including planned developments, zoning relief, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator, as well as to make recommendations regarding the city's long-term planning goals and objectives. Depending on the type of matter, this commission will either make a final determination or send its recommendation to City Council. Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravallo? Here. Commissioner Halleck?
Here.
Commissioner Hugo? Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Linwall?
Here.
Commissioner Medinchev? Commissioner Puctel? Commissioner Westerberg?
Here.
And Chair Rogers.
Here. With 5 members present, we do have a quorum. Also present tonight from city staff are Neighborhood and Land Use Planner Megan Jones and Zoning Administrator Melissa Klotz. This is a formal hearing and there are rules that govern our proceedings. Most importantly, only one person speaks at a time so that all testimony may be accurately recorded. Anyone who wishes to address the Commission regarding any matter on tonight's agenda will be given the opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our procedure is to hear first from staff on the documents on file and then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. After that, persons wishing to make a statement regarding the matter will have a chance to do so. Any person with a legal interest in property located within the defined notification requirements of the subject property may present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. When all supporting and opposing testimony and statements have been heard, the applicant or appellant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Then the Commission will close the record and begin deliberations to consider the standards. The Commission will make formal finding of facts based on the testimony and evidence presented, guided by the standards, the Commissioner's knowledge of our community, and the recommendations of staff. All testimony is taken under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, please limit your testimony to the proposal as it relates to the standards contained within the zoning ordinance and the corresponding staff memo. When testifying, please make sure that you are at a microphone and state your name and address for the record and sign in on the provided sign-in sheet. Our meetings are audio and video recorded. All the meetings are subject to broadcast at a later date. Any matter not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. I will note for the record that Commissioner Johnson has joined us, so we are up to 6 members present this evening. I want to just take attendance to make sure all the cases are represented. Is the applicant from 1601 Simpson Street present? Thank you. From 518 Main Street? All right. And finally, from 1611 Church. All right, thank you. At this point, we will look at approval of our meeting minutes from February 28th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to review those? And are there any edits or changes?
Yes, 2 very minor things. Actually, one is fairly important. Under call to order, it was Commissioner Rogers who opened the meeting. And the other one is just a small typo on page 4 under this review of the standards for approval under number 1, and the third line should be visits there's an extra space between visit and it's S.
Okay.
And with that, I will move approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve the meeting minutes for February 28th. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Lindwall, second by Commissioner Westerberg. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's 5 in favor, and Commissioner Halleck was absent, so 5-0 to 1. And the minutes are approved. With that, we will move on to the first item on our agenda this evening, which is 24 ZMJV 0022 at 1601 Simpson Street. And Ms. Klotz, is this you? Would you please read it into the record?
John Cook, applicant, builder contractor, submits for a special use for a daycare center child, the Infant Welfare Society of Evanston, in the B1 Business District, zoning code section 6923. The Land Use Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, the determining body for this case, in accordance with section 635 of the Evanston zoning code.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to ask that anybody who may be speaking to us on this matter be sworn by raising their right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? Thank you. And if the applicant would please come up. I don't know who's speaking, if both of you are. If you just come up and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, committee. My name is Stephen Vick. I'm the Executive Director of the Infant Welfare Society of Evanston. My address is 5720 West Midway Park in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. You can list your home address or your business address, whichever.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Culpepper. I'm the site director for Teen Baby Nursery. Our address is 2010 Dewey, Evanston, Illinois.
Thank you. And if you would please tell us about your project.
Sure. I just wanted to start for a few minutes, just a little bit of background so you know who we are. Infant Welfare Society of Evanston has been in Evanston for 111 years. We're one of the oldest nonprofits in Evanston. We also were the first 0 to 3 licensed provider in the state of Illinois. We have 2 centers in Evanston, one at 2010 Dewey in the Family Focus building currently. That's the Teen Baby Nursery. And our main office is 2200 Main Street. We also do have a program located in Skokie, Illinois. I wanted to just share some of the circumstances around it and then get to the details that I know the committee's concerned about. But first, we've been at the Family Focus building for about 27 years. In the early mid-90s, we started a partnership with ETHS, serving young women, their families, and their children at the Teen Baby Nursery. We still are funded partially by ETHS. We're also an early Head Start program in partnership with District 65, so we're funded by them as a delegate agency. So all of the 16 families that come to Teen Baby Nursery, that's the maximum that we serve. Are early Head Start families affiliated with District 65. It's a specialty program. I'm going to let Tiffany talk a little bit about the details of that program, but I just wanted to make sure everyone knew this is the only program in the city of Evanston that serves this demographic and these young families that are working hard to make a living and take their children to a quality daycare.
So just a little background about Teen Baby Nursery and the programs that we offer to our parents. So we provide services to teen parents and young adults ages 13 to 26. We have 2 classrooms, 1 infant classroom and 1 toddler classroom, with both maxing out at 8 children each with 3 teachers in the classroom. So some of the things that we provide for the families is 1, high quality early childhood education, a place for their children to be while they're either at ETHS or enrolled in a vocational training program or even at work. And so it's really crucial that we stay in this community, in the area, to continue to provide those services for the family. And if you are not aware, Family Focus is about to go under a remodeling, and so we needed to find space before that happened because we cannot remain in the building while they are undergoing that change. And so while we were looking for places to move, we found a location still in the 5th Ward where we can stay and serve our families that we're hoping to use and open and get ready for our families to be there.
So just to clarify, Family Focus is having major construction. What we've been told from Family Focus is their construction will begin in October or November. That may move to January, the beginning of the year. But our board and our organization decided that we really needed to be proactive and not have our children or families in the building. There's a lot of asbestos in the building. There has been conversation about doing partial renovations and people being able to stay. We felt that was inappropriate for our families and to have babies in that building with tile asbestos being moved and the dangers that exist. So as Tiffany said, we tried to be proactive. We have a long licensing process with the state of Illinois and DCFS. We do have some remodeling that we need to do that were submitted, the permits were submitted by our contractor, which I think you've seen. I think the one critical issue that this committee may be concerned with is the drop-off and pickup issue, which is the parking issue. We are aware that District 65 is building a school across the street, which will probably be operable in 27 maybe. We'll see how the construction goes. We did sign a 3-year lease. I want to stress that this is a temporary move for us. Our plan is to go back to the Family Focus building. I think all of the tenants, once the building is rehabbed, will probably choose to go back. It's a wonderful place to serve community and be in a community center. But that's why we had to sign a 3-year lease. In terms of the parking, so we've been talking to the city. We want to work through this as best as possible. We did talk to Family Focus. They are allowing all of our staff to park in the Family Focus lot as long as possible. They will allow that to happen. It's literally a block and a half away across the field from where Family Focus is. So that's no problem to have our staff park at that facility. We only have, I think, 4 to 6 staff that drive. The other staff are taking public transportation. So the parking for staff is not a problem at all in the Family Focus building. We do have 2 designated slots that are ours as a rental in the back of the building at 1601, and there are a total of 8 slots that are in the back there. What we are proposing is to use our 2 slots and working with Brella to allow possible use of other slots for drop-off and pickup on the land behind the building in the parking lot. We are in negotiations with the church across the street. We have not secured that parking lot as a drop-off and pickup yet. It's in negotiations. They're working on liability issues and legal issues and other issues, insurance, what have you. So that's still a possibility. We're working towards that. But we believe between the parking spots that we have in the back will work for drop-off and obviously any street parking that is existing that our families could use. I will stress it's only 16 families. It's a short window of time. Drop-off usually takes 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes and they're gone. Most of our families are working. They're very busy trying to get to work and drop off their child, give a kiss, say goodbye, and go on with their business. So it's a very short span of time. Same with the pickup window. So we believe that the major concerns of double parking and those sorts of things won't be an issue. Tiffany's very clear with her families and will be very clear about the regulations and the guidelines for our families to park only in our parking spots in the back or street parking, regular street parking that exists. Other than that, we don't feel that there will be any issues. We've been in the community again for 27 years. Our families have dropped off and picked up for 27 years on Foster Street, and we hope to continue doing that until we can get back into the Family Focus building once construction is completed.
And just to add about the car safety, so we actually do have a clause in our parent handbook that has always been operable, that they are to park in a legal parking spot and also maintain visual acuity of their child in their presence. So we've never had an issue with parking at our current location. They sign off on a waiver that they will park in an available parking spot.
And so as I said, any new procedures will be in that same guidebook that will be signed off by parents, so they will understand the regulations and guidelines, assuming that you permit the variance.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Halleck?
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with this. And my question is, could you describe in more detail how a parent drops off a child, and do they leave the car, take the child into the building, and then they sign something, and then when they pick up the child, they leave the car, walk to the school, pick up the child, and walk back. So how many parking spaces do you say you had on the lot?
We have 2 for our unit, but there's 8 parking spots behind the building.
But 16 families dropping off kids, in 10 minutes, they're going to need several parking spaces.
Right, so according to how each parent, so not all of our parents drive. So some of them take public transportation, some of them do Uber. So we do have a little wiggle room, but not everyone comes at the same time. So our drop-off period is between 7:30 a.m. and 9:30 a.m.
I
So
see.
it's not just one specific time. So there are moments where we have one kid at 7:45, then the next kid comes at 8, then 2 more kids come at 8:30. So it's sporadic. So not at one time will we have all 16 families.
Okay.
And there are siblings. So we say it wouldn't be, if everyone drove, it wouldn't be 16 different families because we have a set of multiples.
I understand. And then my last comment is, I think having the drop-offs on your site is much better than having them across the street. I actually can't even, I was trying to picture how this would work in the rain or whatever way you take group of kids out and they stand out there until their parents come, because you can't exactly time that, that doesn't seem like a workable solution at all. So if that was, honestly, if that was the case, I would vote against this.
I was just going to say, just to clarify, the kids stay inside the program until the parent picks up.
Right.
So there would not be a time where all the kids are standing outside.
Okay, but the parent would park in the church parking lot, then cross the street, then get the child, and then cross the street again and go to the parking lot.
If that is a possible solution. Again, I think we have a couple various opportunities. We have our own spaces in the back. There is some street parking. And again, with the sporadic drop-off and pickup, we don't feel it would be an issue.
Okay.
We were asked by the staff to look at collaborating with the church, so that's what we did. Again, I've been talking to the pastor, and they're working through their own internal, concerns and questions and challenges about liability and legal issues.
Okay.
So there is nothing secured with the
Okay.
church. At this point, what we would be requesting is the use of our own back spaces for drop-off and pickup and any existing street parking.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
And just to add that they are infants and toddlers, so a lot of them are brought in with either a carrier or are carried in, so they're not walking on their own.
Yeah, maybe we need to clarify. So we're an early Head Start program that's 6 weeks old to 3 years old. So the majority of these children, at least half of them, are infants, and then the other half are toddlers, 18 months to 3 years, which are always holding hands in the arms of, so it's very rare that the children are walking by themselves.
You mentioned drop-off times. What are the pickup times? Is that also like a 2-hour window, or is it?
Well, it varies on the parent. So we close at 5 o'clock. So between any time, most of the time, I would say the busiest time is between 3:30 and 5 o'clock.
Okay. Other questions from commissioners?
Have you had a chance to talk with the city at all about what could happen to parking on the street as construction gets underway for the school? I realize nobody may know exactly at this point in time, but is the idea that those spaces will still be open on the street, so far as you know?
Well, the only conversation we've had is, certainly with construction, there will be trucks and what have you. I believe more on the eastbound side of the street that borders the actual field. I think that's more of a question for the city in terms of how the construction will go. But my sense is the north side of the street and Simpson itself, I don't think that there's going to be that much in terms of traffic and construction. But I'm not a construction person, so I couldn't tell you.
I think, again, the only concern is no double parking, on that street.
We do have that clause now, that there's no double parking in our manual for where they currently park as well and for our program.
Is there any possibility with your landlord to get more spaces behind the building of the ones that are available there?
I believe it's a possibility because their Brella Productions they're not there when we're there in the morning, and so those spaces are typically open. And again, it's about 5-minute drop off for some of the families, so it doesn't really take that long. So even with the 2 spaces, the rotation and the time frame of when the parents drop off, we don't have like a traffic jam, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to add, I think that is a conversation we can have with Brella. As Tiffany said, in the times since we've been renting, we do not see cars parked in the back, so I think the opportunity is there, but that's a conversation that we would have to have with Brella, certainly. But I do agree that I think with the staggered drop-off and pickup, that we think 2 slots and street parking would be sufficient.
I have a question which is probably going to be directed at staff as well as you guys. Your goal is to move out temporarily and then move back when family-focused construction is completed. Is that going to trigger yet another special use, or kind of what happens with the transition back? And I guess this goes to licensing as well as the new moving back to the family focus, will that require state licenses as well?
So our license moves with us, so all it would take for us is to get in contact with a licensing rep and a state fire marshal, because that building has already been cleared. So the major renovation will not actually take place in our rented space, so it still would be a licensed daycare, but we are under a temporary provision to move while the construction happens.
Okay. And I guess, are we going to be doing this again in 3 years?
From a code perspective, this current special use request, it is considered a full special use, not a temporary use. The zoning ordinance only allows temporary uses for, I believe, 30 days. So it is a full special use. It would be able to continue on indefinitely or change to a different operator unless you want to add conditions to limit any of that. For the foster school location, because that is due to construction and there's a permit for it, they will not lose their status there. They'll be able to move back there without revisiting this group.
Okay.
But again, the special use would be for the space itself, right?
Correct.
So there is the possibility of another group taking that over, say, in 3 years.
Correct.
And there's when you would really have to look at the impact of drop-offs on, with the school beginning to be in operation, correct?
If a different daycare came into this space to use the same special use, as long as it is not more intense of a use, so if it's going to be for 16 or less, then that special use would roll over and the new operator could use it. They would not be returning to this committee unless there is a condition stating they would need to.
Okay, that point, if this new operator ran a daycare center for older kids, then the requirements would be different, correct? I'm assuming that for infants and toddlers, you don't need outdoor recreation space, correct? But if you had older kids, you would. Isn't that correct or not?
Well, I don't know all of the qualifications beyond 3 years old, but I do know for the space, the size of the building, we have to have a certain square footage per child, and we are at the number. So it wouldn't, if you're thinking about more children being in that space, it wouldn't be able to go beyond the 16 kids that we have. No matter
For any age group?
It depends. So there are
I guess what I'm saying is, could we limit this special use to this specific
That's
use?
one of the things I was going to bring up.
Oh, okay, I'm
when
sorry.
we get there, because I was just going to, I want to make sure everybody else gets a chance to ask questions though, too. So, Commissioner Johnson?
So somewhere in the recommendations, it says 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. maximum operating hours. Is that going to be a problem?
We're currently 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And previously, pre-COVID, we were 5:30. We may go back to 5:30, but those would be the extent of the hours, 7:30 to 5:30.
And you mentioned that the drop-off window starts at 7:30. So do staff arrive earlier?
So we get there anywhere between 7 a.m., between 7:15, because we can't walk in when we open. So our doors open to the children at 7:30, and they can't come before 7:30 due to insurance, and our hours of operation is when we start. So
Right.
the staff can get there between 7 and 7:15 is when they usually start for my first round of staff. The second round comes at 8 and 8:15, and then the last person comes at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
It's
Got
a staggered
Yeah.
staffing pattern. There's 3 teachers, so they don't all stay the full 7:30 to 5 o'clock.
Right, because it's about a 12-hour work day, but the staff work about 8 hours, so they're kind of
Correct.
cycling.
It's a 10-hour day.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned that the drop-off window is 7:30 to 9:30. Could you give me a better sense of how staggered that is, like just in your experience at your particular facility? Because I know with my kids' daycare, that you look at the sign-in sheet and you see there are kids that are there every day at 7:31, and there are kids that are dropped off at about 9:29. So it kind of occupies that whole time. So can you give me a sense
So because we are a small group, our first child will get there. I rarely have anyone there at 7:30. About 7:45 is the first child. Then we have like 7:50. Then we have like 8:10. Then 8:20. 9 o'clock, 9:30, then one person at 10 o'clock because we have some public transportation parents. So we really don't have a issue with the parents being all at one time, you know, in our doorway or even on the street.
Okay, that's good feedback to hear, because at my kids' daycare, there doesn't ever seem to be really a surge of parents at any one time. And it seems like the parents, however it works out, they kind of occupy the entire window throughout that 2-hour window. Is that a similar characteristic for the pickup?
It's the same thing. You know, the parents can come at any time to pick up. So if, let's just say they want a half day, some parents can come pick up at noon. Some can come pick up at 1:30. Some can come right at 4:59 to pick up. So it really depends on the individual need of the family, but they can be there from 7:30 to 5 o'clock. And we've never had, you know, an issue even with the pickup, where there may be one kid, you know, getting picked up at 2 o'clock, the next kid at, you know, 2:45, 3 o'clock. So we don't really have, you know, an issue with the parents waiting in line, you know, to pick up their children.
And again, just to remind you, this is a total of 16 children, and there are sibling groups, so it's not 16 cars. There are, how many would you say are public transportation parents?
We have right now three families that are public transportation takers. We have 4 of the children are siblings, and 2 of those children are children to one of my staff members. So that eliminates a parking spot as well, because she likes to walk with her kids anyway.
So if I did my math correctly, that's maybe 9 cars
Yeah.
in that window.
And then those spaces on Simpson that are on the north side of the street, like directly in front of what looks like the front door of your building, are those metered spaces, or are those?
There is a no parking from about, I think, 12 feet or so from
From the curb
very
going
curb
west.
corner
Yeah.
going west. And then those are not metered, but they're parking spots, legal parking spots. I think they have is there
There may
a
be
pay box?
no, but it's 2 hour.
Yeah, it's
Parking.
2 hour, it's
2
2 hour,
hour.
that's what it is. It's 2-hour parking all along that strip where there are some businesses there.
So
On the opposite side, it's regular. There's no restriction on the side where the field is, but where the new school is going to be, that's different.
okay, so on the north side of the street, it's 2 hours max parking, but no pay required.
Correct.
So that there is, we would expect to be some turnover of cars and a space or two being available possibly for a parent to drop off.
Correct. And that's the same, I think, across from the church. And then on the side of Simpson, there's the doggy daycare that they have drop-off pickup rights, I believe. And that's on that, yeah, on the Ashland side.
Okay. I'm trying to gauge these. I know these questions are kind of granular, but I'm trying to gauge the drop-off pickup impact, just kind of mentally, as it compares to other daycares that are located in kind of semi-commercial districts, because Evanston has a couple of them. You know, like Little Green Treehouse on Central doesn't really have any spaces, and the parents seem to make it work. Like Total Child, just adjacent to downtown, not a whole lot of room to maneuver, but I think because of the staggered drop-off pickup time, it doesn't appear to me that there's negative impact to like traffic flow or safety or things like that. I had one other question, given the early age focus of the facility. You know, what proportion of the kids are literally carried in by their parents?
Almost all of them. So we have our classroom, currently, right now, we only have 12 children. We anticipate being fully enrolled by June, depending on, how we recruit families. But most of the time, the kids it's early, so sometimes they come in sleep and the parents are carrying them in. So in our toddler class, our walking children, there's 5 kids that are in there. And then in our infant class, there's 7 kids that are in there. And we have strollers, car seat, and the 1-year-olds, and they are carried in. And one that's not even walking yet.
Yeah, so a daycare that goes through and up to including kindergarten would have, more kids walking around, like physically walking around from car into building rather than being carried by the parent, especially given the young age and the, wanting to cuddle mom or dad, while they're being dropped off. Okay, thank you for the answers.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, I've got a few. So one of the things you heard come up that we sort of were talking about was you have a 3-year lease on this particular location, that you're going to take occupancy roughly October, November. Is that what I understood correctly? Or are you going in earlier?
We're hoping to go in August, September.
Okay.
What we've been told is the construction starting in October, at least at this point. We wanted to make sure we were out of the building before any construction. Now, that may push back.
Okay.
But it seems like from our schedule, August might be the best for us.
Right, and because we still have to get the final walkthrough from our licensing rep and a state fire marshal who has been out 2 times already to just verify and make sure that everything is in order, we still have to do a final walkthrough, and that takes time to schedule that. And currently, right now, we are anticipating August when we are closed already, so as to not to inconvenience the families. We already have a week that was scheduled for staff in service, and to utilize that week for the move-in with the condition of us being approved for
Okay.
use.
And has Family Focus given you an idea as to exactly what the time frame is for their remodels?
That's been a challenge. I think they've been back and forth. They do have tenant meetings. We're waiting for the next tenant meeting to come. The last official word I heard was construction would start in October of this year. I've been hearing side rumblings of maybe January, that being pushed back to January. But I think that's based on their architects and their construction and dollars and those sorts of things.
And did they give you an estimated time? I mean, how did you come up with the 3-year lease?
So they've estimated 2 years
Okay.
for the
So
construction.
you've built in some extra contingency time.
Well, certainly for now, like all the licensing and the potential remodeling, we don't have to do that much work, about $18,000 worth of work to move a wall and build a bathroom. But yeah, that's why we wanted to have 3 years so we can get in there early, get the work done, get licensing, get the fire marshal, all the details we
Right.
need to do, and have that all prepared for the move. And then it seemed like 3 years was the right amount of time in our negotiations with Brella.
All right. And then one question about the parking spaces in the back, I can't remember. Is that off of an alley, or is there just off the street
So
parking?
it's a lot off the street.
Okay,
So
I
behind
couldn't
the
remember
ac-
if it went all the way through or
Yeah,
not.
behind the actual building, I believe there's 8 parking spots that just have a driveway that go into the parking lot of the building.
Okay. Other questions? I'm hearing none. I'll ask if there's anybody else here who wishes to speak to us on this matter. And I don't see any hands going up, so I'll just ask if there's anything you'd like to say in summation before we close public testimony.
No, I just want to thank you all for the conversation, and obviously we've been in the community for a long time and serving a needy population. We hope we can continue to do that.
All right, thank you. With that, we will close public testimony on this case. And general thoughts from commissioners? Any?
Sure, I think it's
No,
a
except that I
reasonable,
think-
I think it's a
excuse me.
reasonable use. I think the one thing that we probably ought to talk a little bit about is whether or not the special use, one of the conditions should be that it applies to this applicant and doesn't run with the storefront.
I think it should.
And I would even go to it applies with a 3-year lease, because that's why I was kind of asking about that, was if it was tight for them, I would have extended a little more.
The only thing I would say is that if because you can never be sure
I don't know.
about construction, if for some reason Family Focus takes longer, I think they could go back to staff and say, hey, look, this
Well,
is the
I
situation.
would condition it so that it wouldn't have to come back to us, but it would council would just have to extend. I think that's something council can do without it having to come through us again, because I don't want you guys to have to go through the process of filing another application, spending that money, going through the whole process again. It would literally just be, council would be able to extend it for 6 months, a year, whatever they feel is appropriate at that time. I would encourage, if possible, to get the drop-off pickup with the church in place, or at a better place before it goes to council, because there will be a few weeks here in between when we decide and what council does. So that would be a condition that I would put in it. It's already kind of in there. But I would just emphasize to try to get that a little more tightened up before it goes to council.
I think that's a recommendation. I don't know that I would add it to the conditions
No.
necessarily.
It's we talk about in the recommendations there with that. Anything else that anybody? All right. We do have a set of standards that we must find are met for any special use. There are 9 of them. And I will run through those quickly right now. The first one being it's one of the special uses that is listed in the zoning district, and a daycare for children is one of the uses that is permitted in this district, so that standard is met. Number 2, it complies with the policies, purposes of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. This is a group that already is existing in Evanston and has for over 100 years. And this seems like a minor accommodation for the city to kind of extend to them to keep them operating and providing a much needed service, which is some of the things that we do see in our comprehensive general plan, is taking care of families and providing a good living environment. So I believe that standard is met. Number 3, it does not cause a negative cumulative effect in combination with existing special uses as a category or land use. Again, this is one of our little commercial areas. It's not in a residential district. And so the fact that it is being used in an operating that isn't necessarily a retail operation, but kind of runs hour-wise with those, seems to make sense to me, so I believe that standard is met. Number 4, it does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. Because these are small children, I doubt if anybody's even really going to notice anything happening at this building. It would be much different if there were older children who were outside during recess activities, those sorts of things. Number 5, it is adequately served by public facilities and services. This building, if I remember correctly, has been redeveloped within the past 20 years. And obviously they have certain conditions that they must meet in terms of safety and fire and those sorts of things. So I believe that one is met. Number 6, it does not cause undue traffic congestion. This is the one where we've probably had the most discussion tonight, talking about pickup and drop off. I think if it's managed well by using the spaces in the rear of the building, and potentially getting space in the church across the street, that we shouldn't see any traffic congestion in the area. I think if the school goes ahead with building, it's going to be a tight area for everybody who's moving in and out around there. But this particular operation is not going to cause that to be greatly increased based on the testimony we've heard. Number 7, it preserves significant historical and architectural resources. The building is not historically significant or architecturally significant that I'm aware of. Number 8, it preserves significant natural and environmental resources. The exterior of the building is not being changed in any way. This is all interior change and use change. And number 9, it complies with all other applicable regulations. Being a child daycare center, they have a whole list of regulations that must be maintained through the state, through the city, through the fire code, all those sorts of things. But I have no reason to believe that they would not comply with those. As I mentioned before, they've been in operation for over 100 years and don't seem to have problems. Is everyone in agreement with my finding on standards? All right, so before I ask for a motion, there is a series of staff recommendations on page 4 of our memo. The only one that's not on there was the condition that we talked about on the special use terminating at the end of the 3-year lease. So that's the only one that I think we would want to add in there. It does include the hours of operation from 6 to 6, Monday through Friday. Employees not parking at street parking, but it sounds like that's being handled by families by allowing them to continue to park at Family Focus, which is a block away. It sounds like they have policies kind of addressing the on-street double parking and those sorts of issues. And again, I think with some of the other conditions that we've kind of talked about, I think those are fine. Is there anything else condition-wise that anybody feels we need to be adding in? All right, I will ask if there is a motion to recommend then to City Council.
Sure. With respect to the special use 24ZMJV-0022 for 1601 Simpson Street, I move that the Land Use Commission make a positive recommendation with the following conditions. One, that the hours of operation shall not exceed 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. 2, employees shall not use metered street parking while working, using off-street parking located on the subject property or at an alternative location which does not displace required parking for those properties. On-street child drop-off and pickup is only allowed in available on-street parking spaces or off-street parking on the property or off-site with a parking lease. 4, special use shall run with the applicant for the length of the lease. Number 5, substantial compliance with documents and testimony on record. And 6, an ordinance granting the special use recorded with the Cook County Recorder of Deeds.
It's been moved by Commissioner Lindwall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioned by Commissioner Westerberg. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravalo?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck?
No. Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lindwall?
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. So with a vote of 6-0, we'll move forward to City Council with a recommendation for approval. And you can work with staff to know exactly when you'll appear on their agenda. It usually takes a couple to 3 weeks, sort of depending on what their schedule looks like. Good luck with your project. With that, we will move on to our second case for this evening, which is 518 Main Street. Is this also you, Ms. Klotz? If you'd please read it into the record.
Brian Wojtkowski, Vice President of Construction, submits for a special use for an animal hospital, Good Vets, in the C1A Commercial Mixed Use District, Section 610.33. The Land Use Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, the determining body for this case, in accordance with Section 635 of the Evanston Zoning Code.
Thank you. Anybody who may be speaking to us on this matter, if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? Thank you. And if you would please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Catherine Lemkowitz. I'm a principal architect with Mansky Diekman Thompson at 4629 North Broadway in Chicago.
All right.
My name is Michael Bush. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Good Vets, and I'm at 2026 North Howe Street in Chicago.
All right. Thank you. If you would please tell us about your proposal.
We are seeking special use permission to open a neighborhood veterinary clinic in an existing mixed-use development. It is a podium and tower building with commercial on the first floor, located at 518 Main, at Main in Chicago, here in Evanston. The commercial suite is unoccupied presently, and it has been since the inception of the building, save for some pop-ups. There's never been any construction in the suite previously. It's about 2,200 square feet. It would be a 4-exam room neighborhood veterinary clinic serving small animals, dogs and cats, primarily from within the neighborhood. The hope is that many people will walk, not drive with their dogs to the clinic, and cats. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good introduction. We've been back and forth. I want to thank you all for your time and consideration.
Could you tell us just a little bit about, Good Vets is a franchise chain, is that correct?
Not a franchise, but a group. Yes,
Okay.
We were founded here in Chicago. We have a number.
You
of
have several
We have
locations.
several locations
Yeah.
here in Chicago and beyond as well. Yes.
Okay. I've looked you up online and done my research on that. So it looks like you're basically doing cats, dogs, occasional and exotic if a vet feels like that's something that they're specialized in doing.
Yes, we see very few exotics, less than 1% of our patients. And yes, that's small reptiles, the occasional rabbit, if that's something that the vet is comfortable with, but really by exception only.
Okay. And the plan is to have operations basically from 8 to 9, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. All days of the week, or what are your hours of operation?
Typical hours of operation are 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, with shorter weekend hours. We're typically closed on Sundays. We'll have kind of a shorter sort of half day. We, at some of our locations, have extended hours until 8 p.m. on weekdays. We have not and will not consider extending beyond that at this location or at any of our locations.
Okay. And how many employees do you typically have during operations?
Yeah, the employee count will grow as the hospital grows. We hope we'll typically start with 4, so it'd be a veterinarian and then 3 staff working with them, and that will grow again with the hospital. It could be as many as 10 to 12.
Okay. And just running through some of the things, I know you've talked with staff already about soundproofing, and did you talk to them about smell proofing and that sort of stuff? I know that's something that's come up before. I don't know if that's an issue. I remember when we were doing another veterinary office, that was an issue that was raised. I don't know if that can really be done too well.
I don't know that we talked about smell proofing.
I'll take the architectural question. So soundproofing, we have 18 feet to deck. We will have a lid on all of these rooms well below that. We will exhaust. We've already negotiated with the landlord, Louvers and Venting for mechanicals, so we will exhaust through the alley. There will be no stinky smells venting out of the front of the storefront. In terms of soundproofing, we are really, really well positioned in this building. It is an exciting site for us because we are on the corner of the building, so we have some storefront along Main, but a large portion of the suite abuts the alley on the blind side, so that, we don't have windows, it's back of house, but we don't have any co-tenants on that side that we're going to disrupt. We also have the roof deck above us. It's a tower and podium building, so we don't have any residents living directly above this space who might be bothered by that in the same way that we would if we had that kind of adjacency. We have currently one demising wall shared with a co-tenant, which we are in the back of house area where we would be most concerned. It's a 1-hour rated demising wall, so it's going to have layers of drywall on both sides. It's going to have something called Sound and Safe in it that's like a rock wool insulation that provides some fire barrier but also soundproofing. And on that side, in the one zone in the back of house where we think there might be dogs barking, we are going to add an extra stud wall with insulation in addition to bat running over the tops of the ceilings and providing an extra layer.
All right. Other questions from commissioners?
Do you have an occasion where you have to walk the dogs?
No, as for routine course of business. The vast majority of our care is half an hour, so relatively quick appointments, either kind of routine wellness, coming in for an annual checkup, or a sick pet, has an ear infection. We do some surgical procedures, but there wouldn't be a walking case. So no, other than owners for walking the pet into the location, no.
And you do not overnight any animals, if I remember correctly?
We do not overnight. We don't do any boarding of any kind, no.
Okay.
In terms of venting, there's no venting up to the roof above you either, right? Onto the deck? Everything is going out towards the alley? Okay. Toilet exhaust, all of that? Okay. On the overnight hospitalizations, you don't run into situations where an animal might have to stay overnight? Just curious how that gets handled.
No, we typically lack the staff to cover that, and so we would refer that patient in that case out to a local emergency provider or any number of 24-hour locations that would be better suited to care for that patient.
And then with-
That's pretty typical. I mean, I've had situations where you have to move a pet from your vet to an overnight emergency vet.
Seems a little rough.
It is, but that's, most vets are not equipped to overnight because of the staffing.
And then, as you heard, we are always concerned about parking. It sounds like you will have enough. You've got some street parking, you have the lot parking, you have the parking inside the building. But just curious, you mentioned that you have people coming on public transportation, but those wouldn't be clients with their pets, right? That's employees. Okay, all right. And then the only other concern I have is, you would need to make sure that there's no double parking for people who do decide to double park and drop the animal off. So that is something that your staff would really need to keep an eye on. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes, absolutely. And typically, clients are coming in with their pet, and so they would be there for half an hour and wouldn't just be dropping off and leaving. So yes, we will be very sure on that.
What does a pet waste station look like? Waste station, and is it in the alley?
Not in the alley. So we secured permission from the landlord to mount it to the building because we don't want it in the public way. It will be on the corner. So yeah, so it's going to be on that corner near the exit stairs. So
That's where you deposit?
Right.
No. Well, I'm not sure what.
So
I thought it was like if I don't know a whole lot about this, but if your animal produces waste in the facility.
Oh, no, not that. This is for exterior pickup only.
So what do you do with that waste?
Yeah. We find there's very little
is that right?
inside the facility waste because the visits are quite quick and most of our animals are well potty trained. If there's cleanup of say liquid waste, of more solid waste, we would double bag that and dispose that with
It's just regular
our
trash.
Exactly.
And this question may sound sillier than my last question, but regarding venting, and I've had this experience with regular venting, let's call it, but when it comes out the side of the building and rises, are there units above where that vent is? Windows that could be opened and?
Not immediately adjacent, no, because it's on the. It's actually proud of any of the units, like on the roof deck
Okay,
side.
so it's unlikely that it's going to go. Okay.
Questions from this end? No? All right, I'll ask if there's anybody else here who wishes to speak to us on 518 Main. I do see someone. Hi. You can go ahead and have a seat if you'd like, and I'll call you back up.
Hello, my name is Catherine Gotzik. I'm the executive director of the Main Dumpster Mile, which is the business district in Southeast Evanston. And we have offices at 900 Chicago Avenue. The district is made up of over 250 businesses, only about 20 or 30 of which have any sort of regional, corporate, national, global, any sort of support. It is definitely a shop, small district. It is the people who are in the businesses are the people who own the businesses in general. And the charter that we were given when we started in 2015, and I am the organization's first and only employee, so I was there, is to retain as many businesses as we can that are small and locally independently owned, and to maintain and protect the small independently owned character of the neighborhood. The three words that were chosen for our district during the Evanston Thrives process were friendly, eclectic, and local. Our mission, our vision, everything we do is meant to keep Southeast Evanston weird. So I am here tonight just to introduce myself and let you know that we are we care about the outcomes of these special use applications, and that we would like to be present as businesses apply to be in the district. I believe, and Melissa, maybe you can help me with this, but I believe there's actually an overlay. I searched for like a solid 20 minutes in the code today and couldn't find it, that encourages active uses on Main Street. And so I also want to make sure that that overlay has teeth. It will be key to us protecting the small and independently owned business character of the district. That said, I am not necessarily here to oppose good vets. I cannot speak for every member or constituent in the district. I promise you, they agree on nothing except that parking should be free. But as a matter of common sense, a vet is a good practical use for that area. It's densely populated. It's densely populated with pets. Make the district walkable for those pet owners. There are pet-friendly sidewalk cafes on that block. So I'm not necessarily here to oppose good vets. Having said that, we strongly hope and encourage good vets that hope that you will participate in our events, that you will let local groups put posters in their windows, have tables at our block parties, make partnerships with local nonprofits, and all the other things that will make them a true member of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gotzik. Anyone else? If not, I will invite you to come back up, and if there's anything you'd like to say in summation, or if you'd like to respond, feel free.
I think just one small comment in response. We partner with local veterinarians who will be part owners of each of our locations. So there would be a local vet who would be an owner in this location, likely from Evanston or the surrounding area. They love getting involved in local community events. It's good for us from a client acquisition standpoint and great for them as members of the community. And we would expect that all of our employees would be sort of local or close to local from the area. And so love the idea of being a part of a local community and supporting that as we're supporting the clients that come into our location.
Okay. Anything else? All right. With that, I will close public testimony and we will begin our deliberations on this particular case. General thoughts from the commission?
I think it will be good to see a vacant storefront filled. And I
A
think
long
this-
time vacant storefront.
Yeah, a long time vacant storefront,
Yeah.
and that is an active use. Although dogs can't always go into the neighboring stores.
There is a pet store right around the corner, though.
There is.
Not anymore? Oh, they moved. I haven't been by there in a few, evidently. I've been avoiding Main Street for a little bit because there's some construction going on there that's causing some issues. Anything else from anyone? I'll just say this as a pet owner. I know that finding veterinary services near your home is very, very difficult in a lot of these areas. I live down near Howard Street. We do have a local vet on Howard Street. But once you leave there, you've got to travel quite a distance. And if you don't have vehicles, things like that, it's very hard to get to some of these places. So having a veterinary use as a neighborhood business, especially in some of the denser areas, I think would be very welcome in Evanston. There is a series of conditions and suggestions that staff has put forth on, again, page 4 of 5, which include the hours of operation not to exceed 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Again, you don't have to be open during those times. That would just be the maximum that we would allow, 7 days a week. Putting up some sort of a pet waste station so that people can pick up from their dogs if their dogs do have an accident on the way into or out of the facility or just happen to be walking in the neighborhood. Employee parking, utilizing an off-site surface parking lot at 935 Chicago Avenue if available, but not parking on-site in the main, which is the name of the building that's there. The storefront windows being kept open so as to allow visual in and out of the facility. Signage discouraging pedestrian activity in the alley shall be installed by the applicant if deemed necessary at any time by the city. I don't know that that's really something that's a major thing. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but we can definitely put that in, as well as our typical document and testimony compliance, as well as recording the special use with the Cook County Recorder. Are there any other conditions that anybody would like to put out? If not, I will ask if there is a motion. Oh, I do have to go through the standards. Damn. All right, let's go through the standards. Number one, it's one of the special, these are the same standards we just went through. It's one of the listed special uses in which the property lies. And again, we look at the fact that we're being asked to have an animal hospital in this district, which is the C1A district, and it is one of the approved special uses. Complies with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. Some of that is to encourage business development in our various business districts. We did mention the fact that I think it's been about 10 years since this building was completed, and there has not been anything in there other than a few pop-ups here and there. So definitely getting somebody in who's a long-term tenant does make sense and is in compliance. That standard is met. Number three, it does not cause a negative cumulative effect in combination with existing special uses of the category and land use. This is an area in which we expect to see a lot of special uses just because of the nature of it being a commercial district. And this is definitely one that would generate traffic but not create an undue burden on the district. Number four, it does not interfere with or diminish the value of property in the neighborhood. This was where we sort of talked about some of the soundproofing and venting and things like that to encourage, so that would not disturb neighbors and people throughout the area. Number five, it is adequately served by public facilities and services. This is a newer building. It's very modern. Everything has been updated, so that standard is met. Number six, it does not cause undue traffic congestion. We shouldn't see a huge amount of traffic congestion. Lots of people do tend to walk their pets. Some people will take public transit if they have a smaller pet that can ride in a pet carrier of some sort. There will be some people who drive just because of the nature of traveling a little bit further than their pet can walk, but I don't believe that this will cause undue traffic congestion. There is parking available in the building for the retail, so that standard is met. Number seven, it preserves historical and architectural resources. There is none for this building. It is a newer constructed building. Number eight, it preserves significant natural and environmental resources. We, again, are not changing the outside of the building. We're just asking, the applicant is just asking for a special use to operate a particular type of business. And number nine, it complies with all other applicable regulations. Again, I'm sure there are some health and safety occupational type things with a veterinary office in terms of handling sharps, hazardous materials, anything like that. Our biological materials not necessarily hazardous, but there's no reason to believe that they would not do this. They are a reputable company that operates several locations throughout Chicagoland area. Is everyone in agreement with my finding on facts? And I will ask then if there is a motion now to make a recommendation to council.
Sure. With respect to special use 24 ZMJV-0020 for 518 Main Animal Hospital Good Vets, I recommend or move that the Land Use Commission recommend approval of the special use, subject with the 7 conditions recommended by staff. I get it all, I think?
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Lindwall, seconded by Commissioner Westerberg. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravallo? Yes. Commissioner Halleck?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lindwall?
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. So with 6 votes in favor and none opposed, we'll move forward to City Council with a recommendation for approval. And again, you can work with staff to tell you exactly when you will appear on City Council's agenda and what your next steps will be. Good luck. We move on now to our final case of this evening, which is 1611 Church Street, which is, again, you. Ms. Klotz, if you'd please read it into the record.
Thomas Gorgachun of CSE 1611 LLC, applicant for the property owner, submits for a map amendment and major variations for an adaptive reuse to convert an existing industrial/office building into 7 dwelling units and 1 ADU, and for additions/new construction for amenity space and parking. The applicant requests a map amendment to rezone the property from the current WE1 West Evanston Transitional District and the OWE West Evanston Overlay District to the R4 General Residential District, Section 685. The applicant requests major variations for townhome orientation that does not face the right-of-way, Section 68112, and detached accessory structures between the principal structure and the front property line, but not within the required front yard, Section 6462D, in the R4 General Residential District. The Land Use Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, the determining body for this case, in accordance with Section 6348 of the Evanston Zoning Code. And for clarification, the 1 ADU is no longer proposed.
All right, thank you. At this point, I'm going to ask anybody who may be speaking to us on this matter to please be sworn. If you'd raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings?
I do.
Thank you. And if you would state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Tom Gorgachon. I live at 1107 Hull Terrace in Evanston.
Thank you, Mr. Gorgachon. And if you would tell us about the proposal.
Proposal is to adaptive reuse of an existing Bow Trust warehouse building at 1611 Church Street and to 7 two-level dwelling units on the property. In addition, the variances being requested are really being driven by the location of the existing building, where it was sited. The site is approximately 1 acre, a little bit less than 1 acre. The building in its original construction back in the 20s, so it's plus minus 96 years old, was set back further on the lot. There used to be at one time a gas station in the front, and there was other buildings and things buried that we have since dug up and removed on the site. And so the orientation of the building is why we're requesting the variances.
There is I know we have some slides. I think they were included in our packet. I don't think there's.
Do I run this?
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. There's some photographs of the existing building you're looking at. It's a little tired looking right now, and mostly paved over with hard, impermeable surfaces, asphalt and concrete. And I would say 95% of the site is currently paved over. And part of our proposal is to remove all of that paving and replace it, some with permeable pavers, some with landscaped areas, some with a urban garden setting, and some of the space will house the parking buildings that'll be located on site. There's a survey of the site reflecting about 1 acre. This is a new survey showing all the underground utilities and stuff that's out in the street, so we can get a better handle for what sort of infrastructure improvements would need to be made at that location. Let me just add one thing, that all the utilities that are in the street can currently accommodate the building. So there's no other than connections, there's no other requirement for any new water, sewer, stormwater management. It's all being taken care of with existing infrastructure. So this is generally the existing plan as it's shown today. The gray area on the left side of the diagram is the existing building. Has a bow truss.
I'm getting reports from the back. If you could just kind of move around to this side, so when you're talking into the microphone. They're having a hard time.
Here, you mean, like
yeah,
here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're having a hard time picking you up for the cameras.
I see. Oh, the cameras, of course. So this is the existing site plan as it looks pretty much today. The building itself is about 12,000 square feet. It's a bow truss building. Floor to ceiling right now is about 24 feet. The trusses are about, at the apex of the bow is about 9 feet tall, from bottom cord to apex of the top cord. So there's a ton of volume in the space, which is why we are comfortable that a second mezzanine level can be placed inside the building. In the upper left of the diagram is a 3-car garage. There is a roofed over area like a porte cochere that connects the 3-car garage to the main building, and that would be utilized as part of the redevelopment. The green areas there are just the sort of the landscape areas and the front yard setback area, which is just at the time growing grass. This is sort of a sketch of the sustainability concepts that we're working on. So it includes a lot more landscaped areas, some natural prairie stormwater detention areas in the front within the setback. You see the yellow things on there are intended to look like solar panels. So we're going to have a photovoltaic farm there. And then the dwelling units, there's no pointer on this, is there? No. We have one.
I say, if you want, Ms. Klotz, can you give him the handheld microphone, and you can actually go up and point if you want.
I just happen to have a laser pointer in my pocket.
Okay.
So these areas here are sort of the outdoor patio areas for each one of the units. So the units are oriented east-west. The view corridor is really to the east because there's only about 16 feet from the backside of the existing building to the west property line that's adjacent to the townhouse development on our neighbors. This area in here is an added part. It's a greenhouse food prep area. And we're developing this property as co-housing, which means that everybody sort of participates in the management of the property, and it's designed and engineered to influence and accommodate social activity among the residents. This area in here is between the two parking garages. This is a four-car garage. This is an 8-car garage and a 2-car garage that includes the handicap spot. So there's a total of 13 spaces on site for 7 units. This diagram shows the completed site plan that we're showing with one parking building here. This is a rain garden out here in this area. Driveway access to this parking building, that parking building. This is an open sort of urban garden area here, and back here is sort of a combination yard orchard. This is the addition space that we're putting on the south end of the building. This area right in here is the sloping glazing of the added-on greenhouse, and a little bit over here for some other front of the house kind of activities. This piece right here is the built-in or enclosed porte cochere that showed on the original drawing that gets closed in and actually becomes a music recording studio. This is our proposed stormwater management plan, which is made up of multiple parts. Permeable pavers in this blue area here, it's permeable pavers. The sort of lime green stuff or bright green stuff is underground high-density polyethylene tubes, either 36 or 42 inches, that are underground and contain most of the stormwater. This is the rain garden that picks up some of the downspouts and all this and associated runoff from these hard paved areas. And we are engineered to accommodate about 14,000 cubic feet, detain 14,000 cubic feet of rainwater in a 100-year event. It's sort of a diagram of the interior spaces. The front common space, meeting space here, greenhouse here that also sort of doubles as a dining area, if you will. kitchen area and lounge area in here. There's a mezzanine above this, which contains some meeting space and that kind of thing. And then single bay units, 3 single bay units in a row, and then bay and a half units, 4 bay and a half units to comprise the total of 7 units. This is the ADU that Melissa talked about. It's really like a guest room. It's not an apartment, doesn't have a kitchen, but it's like a hotel room, sort of, I guess you'd say. This is fitness and yoga space in here. Art room, well, we've changed the plan a little bit, but art room, and then a wood shop and wood shop art room combination. We had 3 pounds of activities, but only a 2-pound can to put them in, so we had to double up some of the uses in there. This is a diagram of the mezzanine levels, so the second level of each of these units, which is smaller. I mean, if you imagine the bow truss coming like this, as you're walking on a flat floor, that roof is sort of coming down on you, so we can only use a portion of it. We get about 450 square feet of second level, but it's enough to have a home office, a den, another sleeping space. The areas to the east, that's all 2-story space. So if you're in the lower level, you're looking up into the underside of the curved roof as it's coming down. The trusses, the structure of the trusses will be exposed within each apartment.
Can I interrupt for 1 second, as long as you're on this, as long as you're on this slide? Where, because I understand the height of the roof, but the trusses you said were 9 feet. So are the trusses where the partitions are?
Trusses are where the demising partitions.
The demising
between
partitions
units
are.
right.
Okay, so there aren't any trusses in the.
One side would be exposed. What we're trying to do is we're trying to show some of the architecture, the original architecture of the building within the unit. So in the bay and a half unit, for example, these larger units, that truss will actually be sitting about 6 feet into the tenant space or the owner space.
Doesn't that conflict with walking under it if it's?
We have so much height in here that actually the floor of the mezzanine level is well below the bottom chord of the truss by about 3 feet. Right? And so that truss is actually going to be an architectural feature within the unit.
But there's at least 7 feet below the truss?
Yes.
Okay.
I think the bottom of the truss is about 12, the second floor, top of the second floor is at about 10, right? So if you think about it, and the cords are massive timber cords about yay big in the bottom cord. So you'd have 1, 2, 3 steps, right, to be able to get to the other side of that truss.
Oh, I see.
So it's part of the architecture within the unit, kind of the,
I see.
yeah, an homage to its industrial past, I guess is sort of a corny way to put it, but yes. And so that gives you a range of unit sizes that we have in there. And of course, 100 years ago, the building wasn't built perfectly and dimensionally. There's 11 of those bow trusses in there. But the dimension space between center of truss to center of truss wasn't exact. It's close. It's between 16 and a half to 18 feet, center to center on the trusses. So the units get a little stretched out or skinnied up, depending what it is. We saw that one already. So this is a little just blow up of the typical single bay units that we're showing. So you can see them side by side. To give you an idea, living area here, dining kitchen area here, bathroom, laundry, bedroom done at this level. On the level above, stairs ascending right in here, and this would be a second bedroom or a den or something like that, a full bath, utility, and storage on the second level. The other thing we're doing is, you'll see in the next slide, you see these openings right here wrapping around the stairs. There's a ridge skylight runs down the length of the building, and the idea is to get sunlight into the center of these because obviously there's no windows on the sides. You have windows on the east elevation and on the west elevation. And so the idea is to get daylight into the center of the unit, spills down the stairs into the kitchen to brighten these places up. It's a little bit of an exploded view so you can get an idea of what these look like when they're stacked up. Again, a 2-story living room area, loft level up here. The associated structure, you can see how the bow truss kind of curves down, and so this becomes like storage space. It starts to get, you know, a little short for me, for sure. Kitchen, dining down below here, sort of tucked under the mezzanine level. Parking garages. You'll see an elevation, you'll see the south elevation of this garage here, which is facing Church Street, in a second. And so the access drive here is, we widen it because we have to satisfy a code issue about width of the driveway, so we have to widen it slightly, but it's the exact same curb cut, and then pulling into this paved area for parking on this side and parking on this side. So the garage doors are sort of internal to the site. Handicap parking is in that building. And this gives you an idea of the proposed architecture for those things. The buildings will be clad in cedar. We're trying to figure out how we can clad the garage doors actually in cedar so it looks sort of like a uniform, homogenized kind of look. Somewhere there's an elevation to the south elevation of the garage looking from Church Street. That looks like it did. Oh, here we go. So these are some of the materials that we're proposing to use. It's a combination of natural cedar and Corten steel as an accent. So in the garage, on the buildings, there would be a combination of cedar cladding. We're looking here at the east elevation. So cedar cladding here. This is block with cement stucco on it. The other side is all cement block, Corten steel accents, steel plate. On this side, and this is the view looking to the north, say from Central Street. Another view of the concept for the application of the cedar to the garage doors to try and make them disappear. This is the picture I was looking for, which would be the view from Church Street to the north. So that what you see is that long garage structure, the trim above, and this little accent piece down here is Corten steel, a row of windows to light up all the parking spaces during the day. And then this is all clad in cedar down here. Just in front of that to the south is the rain garden, natural prairie grasses and that kind of thing, as part of the stormwater detention. And that's pretty much the proposal.
All right. Are there questions? Commissioner Halleck?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm fascinated by this project. I think it's very, very cool. A couple questions, though. One is, I see you have handicap parking, but you don't have any accessible units, right? I mean, because they're 2 stories.
Not specifically. I mean,
Do you
satisfy all the ADA stuff with bathroom and wheelchair spins and all that.
But you
kind of stuff.
don't need to have an accessible unit that's like has a lift that takes you to the. That's not required. Okay.
Accessible for the ADA requirements that the project has, yes.
Okay, so my main question is about this co-housing idea.
Yeah.
And, at first when I kind of heard it, I thought, was this like a commune or something, and I...
Been asked that before, yeah.
Yeah. And so, but my question is, because I always had the idea, true or false, that in the old days, beginning of the century or last century, when there were several co-ops on Lakeshore Drive, and one of the reasons why they were co-ops was so that they could restrict the people that lived there. And so isn't it sounds like your co-housing option is a co-op, and so how do you prevent that from happening? In other words, if I want to buy one of the townhomes and someone doesn't like me that's already existing, that already owners, how do they
Avoid the discrimination.
Well, they could say, I know you can't discriminate on race and all that, but they could say, well, I don't like bald people, so I'm not going to. How does that work?
What happens with cooperatives is that the cooperative sponsor creates a set of bylaws, much like you would have in a condominium or an HOA kind of thing, of rules and regulations about how it works. With co-housing, because it is an encouraged and in some cases enforced cooperation setup in terms of maintenance, and it's multi-generational, and it's non-discriminatory, and there's no, and there's so we've been dancing around that problem, to be quite honest with you, about how you do it, but only because of the extraordinary nature.
Why do it?
Two reasons. Two reasons. One is that as a rental, it doesn't work because people wanted to have a stake in the ownership as a co-housing project. As a condominium, it's almost virtually impossible to enforce the bylaws that this project will have for an owner. You have to sell to whoever wants to pay for it. So a cooperative.
You have an HOA in most condos that takes care of public spaces and all that.
Yeah, but it doesn't encourage the social integration that co-housing is really all about.
Yeah. And my main
That's
question
what it's- that's what
is the process of applying, and how that it could become restrictive and
I think it's where you might see restriction is on somebody's willingness to participate in the process, as opposed to unwillingness to have somebody else come in because they don't want to do it. I mean,
But what if I say that I'm going to participate and then I don't?
then what happens is, in the case of the bylaws as we're developing them now, you pay. So if you're not willing,
Fine.
here's a short version. So it snows, right? And the idea is the idea is there is a committee, a grounds maintenance committee, and you get volunteers to come out and you shovel the snow. And if you say, well, I'm not going to shovel the snow, it's too cold. Well, then.
I'm too old.
Yeah, I know that feeling too. That's why it's a good example. So what you have to do then is you have to contribute to pay somebody to come and do the snow. So in the case of this particular thing, the way we're set it up now is that for a light snowfall, if we ever get snow again around here, you take care of it yourself, and you have equipment and volunteers who are doing that. In the case of a heavy snow, you have a service that comes in and deals with the snow.
That doesn't sound horribly unlike. I'm in a self-managed condominium, and that's kind of we try to do things on our own.
But okay, back to my initial question though. Maybe for you, in a condominium, I've never lived. Well, yes, I have. But anyway, in a condominium, you can't. The other condominium owners can't. Right. Not allow someone to buy in to the condominium. And in this case, though, you could. Yeah. The group could.
Yeah, the only thing a condominium has is usually the association has a right of first refusal upon a sale. And so if there's a real concern about it, the condo association can acquire the unit and then resell it to somebody else. For the most part, on a cooperative, because of difficulty in financing, considerable down payment, 30 to 50% down payment, you're financing a share interest in the entity that owns the entire project. So they're difficult to finance. So for the most part, the requirements of cooperatives is financial, right? Do you have making this up, but you have the $250,000 to put down in this, and oh, by the way, everybody pays their share of the real estate taxes every month, and everybody pays their share of the common area maintenance every month, and the utilities every month, and so it's usually that kind of a drill. This one is a little bit different because of this co-housing thing that involves participation. Ostensibly voluntary, but it can only be voluntary up to a point. Everybody has to participate.
But in a co-op, you own stock in the co-op, correct? And in this, you own your unit.
No, you own stock.
Oh, you own
You
stock.
own stock in the corporation, the non-for-profit that owns the property. Yeah. Yeah, it's not an easy one, but as we were looking through the various ways to organize this project, one, to get it built, but two, how do you operate it? How do you maintain it? How do you satisfy everybody's concern about, gee, I want some sort of ownership, right? I don't want to be a tenant, so I get this proprietary lease, you know, that is basically perpetual as long as I keep paying the bills. And then we have this other element, which is this social integration thing that is part of the nature of the project, that is different than a typical homeowners association or a condo association, right? It's more than management. It's really participatory. So if you look at some of the other models that we've been looking at to try and get a handle of what this was, this really started out as a live-work kind of deal, right? It wasn't co-housing until we understood what a definition of co-housing was. And I said, well, that really looks like what you guys are putting together here. This is not live-work. This is something different. I think it was really born out of the pandemic, when small groups of people, you couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't go to a tavern, and so people would get together and start to do things together. Small apartment buildings or small condominium buildings, and everybody sort of get together and do things. This kind of came out of that.
I think in an idea, I love the idea, frankly, but I think it could go wrong, and that's what I was asking about.
The way that it's being designed from the ownership point of view is that there was a small group of people, about 6 people, who thought, well, this is a cool idea, and I showed some example of what's going on in the States here, and where it really came from was out of Northern Europe, Denmark and Norway, and those places where it really got off to a big start. And there's several hundred of these over there, and I think, Melissa, you had 161 in this country, something like that. So it's not a new animal. Each one, in terms of management, participation, requirements, and all that stuff, is different. And those requirements and obligations and rules, if you will, are really generated by the people that live there. So it's not like, I used to do a lot of condominium development in the old days. And you would have, okay, here's a set of bylaws, here's the declaration, here's a set of bylaws. Yes, you guys can change it, but this is how we're going to start. This thing is actually evolving as the people are committing to buy into the project. There'll be a rules-making committee, and that's what they'll decide to do. So it's, in that sense, it has this very democratic kind of approach. And everything that we've done so far with this small group of people is being done by consensus. Everybody has to agree. And, for somebody like me, that's way out there, so, but that was the guideline that they set. And so we went through about a 5-month sort of vision process. What is everybody thinking about what this is and what it's going to contain? How are we going to operate it? What's it going to look like? And that went on and on. We actually ended up developing a booklet, if you will, about what this thing is and what people's visions were that we could hand off to the architect and say, here's what we're thinking. You don't have to guess what the expectations are. Here it is what we're thinking. Of course, everybody thought, Taj Mahal and way over the top stuff, but reality has its way of, coming back at you. So that's what we're looking at here.
Commissioner Westerberg, did you have some questions?
Yes, let me start off with a question for staff. So as you noted in the follow-up memo and throughout this memo, this is not really following exactly what you had in mind or what the code had in mind for this district. It does seem to kind of hit the intent in terms of taking an industrial area and turning it into residential. But I have two questions for you, which is, if this moves forward, that's going to impact what the original plan was for connecting some of those streets, from Florence Avenue on. And that changes, the nature of this development is going to change what can happen in this area. And then secondly, is there a concern at all about maintaining a light industrial area and being able to keep that here? Or is the city's desire to really see this turn completely residential?
I believe the overall intent of the city as a whole is to preserve industrial land. However, certain industrial properties, specifically properties that follow the old Mayfair line, those have been identified in a variety of city plans to redevelop to more closely match what the surrounding uses are. So in this case, the intent is to redevelop the industrial property for it to become residential, ultimately to the R4 district. So from that perspective, the intent of the West Evanston plan is met. It would redevelop as moderate density R4 residential. However, it does not meet all of the requirements of the overlay. It does not add in the street, which does impact how surrounding properties potentially would redevelop and whether they could follow the overlay or not. So there is an impact to the decision on this development. That being said, I have talked to many interested parties over the years who have wanted to redevelop this property, and ultimately, in the climate that we now have, it's largely infeasible. Surrounding properties are not looking to redevelop and intend to stay as is for quite a while. So theoretically, if the overlay district remains in 20 or 30 years, if all of those properties do want to band together and follow the overlay and add new Florence and whatnot, that could happen. Alternatively, city plans may change and that may no longer be desired. From that perspective, the addition of streets adds infrastructure and adds costs and removes land from the tax roll. So there are positives and negatives to both sides of it. It's not an easy discussion.
No. And I'm not necessarily opposed to seeing the overlay district actually change as things roll forward and as properties become available. I think my question is more, does it cause problems for the city later on that it has to modify the original plan as the reality of these lots come up? Or is that something that the city can be flexible with and say, well, 5 years ago we had this development go out, we'll work around it, we'll figure out some other way?
I would anticipate a lot of those questions and answers will come about through the comprehensive plan and new zoning code. I do not know if the surrounding regulations would remain the same or if they would be changed. It is largely dependent on what the community wants and what comes out of the comp plan.
Just a question for you, sir, on the environmental aspects of this property. You indicated that you've done some testing and mitigation. Have you filed full reports with the city on any NFR letters you've received? I mean, did you need to do that in terms of the...
We had to file documentation with the state. We did find an underground tank that was removed, and so we went through the normal process to get that out and over-excavate and get the contamination out. And, this site has a bit of a checkered past, if you will, And so we wanted to be very cautious, especially if you're bringing in residential property and some of these people would have children and stuff like that, that we really cleaned up. And so, you know, we did a phase 1, of course, to see what the history was. We did a phase 2, and then as part of our soils evaluation, our geotechnical evaluation, we took cores throughout the site and then had them not only lab tested and analyzed, but also the geotechnical bits about what was down there.
Okay. Has the staff received any of those tests, documentation on any of that?
I don't believe we have. It's not required at this point. It would be required as part of the building permit process.
All right. Just want to make sure that there is clarity and disclosure on that.
I'm sorry, beg your pardon?
Just want to make sure there's clarity and disclosure on the site in terms of what it's
I have
done.
no problem doing it.
Okay. And then how will all that pavement be removed? Just kind of
Busted up
jackhammering
and
it?
hauled off.
Okay.
We looked at the possibility of bringing actually equipment in and reusing the stuff right on site, so we didn't generate a bunch of truck traffic and a bunch of, activity. And it turns out, as we were going through the pricing process, that the nature of that process, it is less expensive to break the stuff up, throw it in a truck and haul it off and have someplace grind it up for fill later.
Yeah.
I thought it was an efficient way to do it, and it was kind of, earth-friendly sort of stuff, which is part of the guidelines of the entire project. And it just proved to be extraordinarily expensive.
Okay.
I just want to follow up on the environmental. So as far as the state is concerned, this property is suitable for residential
Yes.
use?
Yes,
So,
after we cleaned it up. mind
Yeah,
you.
no.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, we
because
spent we spent it.
as you said, it has an industrial past.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to ask a little bit on the diagram and the where the yoga studio is, and you've got that sleeping room still on the plan. So what is the, how would that work? Is that intended for
It's like
guests
overnight
or-
guests. Yeah, it's overnight guests. The units are kind of small. Part of the architectural concept was keep the units relatively small, but have this other space. So, making this up a little bit, Thanksgiving dinner, right? You have the family over. You can't do it in a small apartment that's 16 and a half feet wide, and a dining table that might seat 8 or 10. So you make some other facility out there that you can accommodate a larger group.
Yeah, no, I was more interested in the sleeping room.
Yeah,
Is that
sleeping area
intended for
is
like overnight guests?
kind of thing, yeah.
And I presume that your rules will have something about who can access that space?
Yeah.
Or who can use it?
Yeah, luckily, I don't have to be part of that discussion, but yes.
But that still is in the plan as
Yeah, it'll be
opposed to,
like
it's
with
not
the
an
art
ADU.
room. Yeah, the art room or the workshop, there'll be like a sign-in sheet kind of process, I guess, and you reserve the space for what you need. I mean, there's some other home office space that's available in the project, and if somebody wants to go in there and have a meeting or needs to work outside of the house for whatever reason, that space gets reserved.
From a zoning perspective, it is not an ADU. It does not have a kitchen and all of the living facilities. It is just a sleeping room. It also is not a rooming unit since it is not available for rent like
Okay.
a hotel room.
And would it be considered a vacation rental room? Or would that have to go through a whole different process if they wanted to do that?
It would require the vacation rental approval process. But my understanding is that the intention of it is that it's a guest room, which is thereby an amenity space for the owners of the property.
The city would really require them to go through the vacation rental, even though the only people who can rent it are people who are affiliated with the owners?
No, if they wanted to fully rent it out
Okay,
like an
okay,
Airbnb.
I didn't understand.
Airbnb sort of?
Yeah, then there would
yeah,
be an
yeah,
added
yeah.
process.
Yes,
That's not-
but
that's not
if I own a unit and my mother's coming to stay,
You don't want her to
And
stay.
it
I
is-
don't want her to stay in my house.
From a zoning,
That's what it's for.
from a
That's
zoning
actually what it's for.
perspective, it is amenity space then.
Right, okay. Other questions, this end? Myrna? I just have a couple little questions. First off, I think this is, like Commissioner Halleck said, I think this is an interesting project. The solar panels that are proposed for the garages, are those to power the units? Are those just to feed back into the grid? Has that been thought through?
We're sort of in the process of figuring that out, how to do it. There's not enough room on there to generate enough, we're looking at, because it's all electric and it's all air source heat pump, heated and cooled, we're looking at about 200 kW in power requirement. You can't get that off the solar panels. So what we're looking at now is, okay, well, we've got site lighting, we got car charging stations to deal with. Now you're getting into battery storage and Tesla
Right.
walls and that kind of stuff. And so as you're trying to figure out what that is, so it may only be some periphery electrical services that are there. And then you have to figure out, okay, are we running alternate current? Are we going to have to change the current coming off these solar panels? Or are you going to start running site lighting, for example, and garage lighting as DC kind of thing? So the engineers are working on that now.
Okay.
Trying to figure it out. But it is an objective, and there's just not enough rooftop real estate to power the electric load.
All right. And how far off of Church Street is the garage proposed?
Well, it's beyond the front yard setback, which I think is what, 27 feet?
Yeah.
27 feet, so it sits behind that.
So you're usually more than that.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that I have any other questions. Commissioner Johnson has stepped away. Is there anybody else here who wishes to, Commissioner Johnson's coming back. Did you have any questions? Nope, okay. Is there anybody else here who wishes to speak to us on this matter? I will note for the record that we did receive a comment that was emailed to us shortly before the meeting from Patrick Conway. So if everybody had an opportunity to look at that. And then, Mr. Gershon, if there's anything you'd like to say in summation?
I guess it's fair to say that, we went to some great lengths to try and organize a difficult project that would fit closely into the various slots that are required, through Melissa Klotz's office and other requirements. But one thing I've learned, I've been doing this sort of work, not co-housing, but real estate development and residential development for over 40 years. And one of the things that happens on the front end of these deals is that all the balls are in the air, right? And the object is don't drop the one that's glass. Don't drop the one that's the deal killer. How do you figure out how to find out the slots with the least amount of controversy and difficulty, right? You always look for the bright line solution on these things, whether it's a design problem, a financing problem, a marketing problem. You look through the quickest way. And I will say that with Melissa being patient enough to do several versions of the zoning analysis as we were trying to think through how to mold this project and to make it work for people who wanted to go there, how it worked with the zoning, with the overlay district, and all the other pieces that come together. It was a pretty incredible process. Usually you go by the book, you solve the problems, you engineer your way through it, and you try not to have a whole lot of controversy. This one was a little bit more difficult. And so it was really kind of, stage of my career was kind of fun. Frustrating, but fun.
All right. With that, I will close public testimony, and we will move into deliberation. You may have a seat.
Done with me?
Yep,
Thank you.
Thank you. General thoughts from commissioners? Commissioner Halleck?
Sure. I thought it was very significant to learn that several developers have tried to make the plan that the city had, the literal plan, work in this area. And I think that tells you that you got to listen to the market. Plans are made to be changed, So given that, though, so I think that this working within the existing context is a great idea. And beyond that, taking a formerly industrial building and making it residential and making it as sustainable as possible, and all those things, I think is absolutely the right approach. So.
I think it's a really interesting project. As someone who sits on a condo board, I have to say I wish you luck with some of the organizational aspects of this, but it should be an interesting adventure, if nothing else. I think my only question is, given the fact that this changes a lot of what the overlay district zoning was supposed to accomplish, not all of it, but some of it, is this something that should wait until the comprehensive plan, the new one, is done? Or is this something that should move forward independently of that? So I'd be interested to see or hear what the other commissioners think about that.
I think development is the kind of thing that you strike when you can. You develop when you can, when you feel like the situation is right, and all the balls in the air, and that analogy. I think that someone has come along to do this at this time, and I think the comprehensive plan is going to take years. So by that time, it may be a wholly different economic situation, and you never know. You may lose the project.
Well, I think that, in my view, the West Evanston Overlay District was ill-conceived from the beginning. While I think it's great to have a master plan that illustrates what could happen in a specific area and how things ought to be, could be reconfigured and connected, in my experience, the only way you can do this sort of master planning would have been for the city to buy up all the properties in question, demolish, and build the new infrastructure. So I don't have a particular problem with removing this property from the West Evanston Overlay District. I think we've had other examples where the West Evanston Overlay District required certain things, like, with residential structures, it requires front door stoops, which is kind of, in contrast with trying to create buildings that are accessible for anybody with a disability. So, and I think that this project really is very interesting. It's not, and a co-housing kind of approach is actually not even that new in Evanston. If you think of for those of you who've been around, the Reba Place Fellowship, was another example of, in that case, a religious organization that acquired buildings and leased them to their members. So I think that in terms of the sustainability features of the project, the adaptive reuse, I think that this would be a positive addition. And frankly, I think that we've had recently a number of projects that have come before us that are kind of new concepts in terms of housing. We have work live, we have ADUs, we have the little efficiency home neighborhood that the council recently approved. So I think that this fits into really expanding the variety of housing types that are available in Evanston.
I also have to say I'm really excited by reusing and adapting an existing building, which I think adds a lot. It adds a lot to the neighborhood, and I think it keeps something of the older neighborhood there, which I think is very important.
Any thoughts from this end?
I'm actually agree with my other commissioners that this is a great way to reuse an existing building and give it new life. I think it's great.
All right. Just some general thoughts, like I mentioned before. I think this is an interesting take. It's nice to see somebody who's taking an older property and actually, in my opinion, not overdeveloping it by putting as much as you can hard surface building wise. There's a lot of green area. We're removing a lot of concrete. It's really re-envisioning kind of adaptive reuse, not just of the building, but of the entire site plan, which I think is good. You know, in terms of the co-housing, I mean, the only thing that kind of kept running through my mind for all of this is it's kind of like a condo building that has all these amenities. You have the community room, you have the gym, you have all these different things. So it's really just having those amenities, but kind of reimagining even some of them to be things that are a little more, a wood shop. I mean, that's not something a typical condo would offer you.
I think the other thing, it hasn't been said, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm sure you figured out the economics of this, but usually when you have all those amenities, you have 100 units, not the 7 or whatever this is. And so taking, I know the issue is always, how many square feet are we devoting to amenities versus how many to revenue producing square footage? And that has to be a certain percentage, and you're way over that. So,
and in regards to the overlay district, I think some of our overlay districts, when was the West Evanston overlay put in place? Was it like 2007, 2009, somewhere around there?
I believe it was adopted in 2009.
Okay. A lot of times, especially in Evanston, our overlay districts are not necessarily guidance as opposed to here's what we want. And I always think about the people who come before this commission and say, I don't want this business, I want a florist shop in here. And it's like, there is no florist shop that's planned. Nobody's presenting a florist shop to us. And I think some of these overlay districts behave in that same way. We had a vision in 2009 for what this neighborhood should look like, but in the intervening years, no one's come forward to present that vision as a feasible project. I mean, Ms. Klotz mentioned that we've had several people who have expressed interest in, hey, I'd like to do this. Oh, no, I don't. So I think it's when looking at our overlay districts in particular, it's like, what are they providing guidance, or are they kind of prescribing the exactness of a neighborhood? And I think that's where it kind of crosses the line, because then you don't give yourself the ability to take a unique and new approach to something.
and just relating to the comprehensive plan, and I know we are going to hear a presentation soon, but those are the things that I think we can offer to this consultant group, or maybe the staff has already offered it, because we have this experience working with these overlay districts. Why do we have them? Maybe that's a question that should be answered. So, yeah.
So I'm very interested in this project. I'm very excited about it. Like I said, I like the adaptive reuse of it, keeping the architectural interest of a building that's almost 100 years old, but also then bringing something modern to it, providing the sustainability aspects of this property, which is paved over, I'm sure sheds lots of water, and the idea is to retain that water on site and make use of it through a rain garden, through permeable pavers, this sort of stuff, and kind of keeping it on site, which I think should be one of the definite goals of any project that we look at. As we get these heavier rains, bigger storms, it's going to become more and more important. We do have 2 sets of standards to go through, since there is a request for a map amendment here, as well as the major variation that would be involved. So the first one I'll go through is the map amendment, if that's okay with everyone. And there are 4 standards which we have to find are met. The first one is whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Comprehensive General Plan as adopted and amended from time to time by the City Council. This is really kind of where that overlay district comes in. And I think one of the things that we have to look at with any of our documents, our comp plan is 24 years old. We're currently working on a new one, but we've never let that be like a stagnant document. We've allowed it to kind of guide and what is the intent of things versus what is the strict letter of things. In this particular case, I feel that the intent of the comp plan is really to include those things like adaptive reuse, to produce more sustainability on our properties, to envision new things and keep the city alive and vibrant and kind of on the cutting edge of things without being stagnant about, wanting us to keep ourselves in 1950 sort of thing. So I believe that that standard has been met. Number two, whether the proposed amendment is compatible with the overall character of the existing development in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. This is, we start to border on residential areas. The plan has always been to kind of convert this area into an R4 eventually. In looking at the neighboring areas, we have R4s, R3s, open space, the overlay district, the West End, Evanston transitional district, all of these sort of things. It's obviously a transitional area, but the goal has always been stated by the city to convert this into an R4 district, therefore making it residential. And that's been the character of some of the abutting properties, and so it makes sense that that standard also would be met. Number three, whether the proposed amendment would have an adverse effect on the value of adjacent properties. This is a warehouse which I believe up until just recently was about a quarter used, if even that, even lower. So it was a small use for a very large facility. It probably was not generating much in property taxes. It probably was not something, if you drive by it, it kind of looks like an abandoned site, whether there was any activity on it or not. It was so minimal that it really didn't appear to be an active use. So I think by bringing in something like this, which is residential housing, which is, again, envisioning that place, making it a nicer location, a nicer site, will just increase property values around that area. As opposed to living next to a vacant warehouse, you're now living next to a thriving little co-housing community. And number four is the adequacy of public facilities and services. I believe that the applicant did mention that this property could be serviced by the existing facilities. And the fact that I will just also mention that, although they cannot entirely power themselves with the electric off the solar panel, they actually are making efforts to decrease the amount of impact that they will be having on the utilities at the location. So I believe that standard is met. Those are the four standards for a map amendment. Is everyone in agreement with my findings on standards? All right. Do you want me to take two different votes? If everyone's okay, I will just go through the other standards, and then if we're all in agreement on those, we'll just do it as one. The next set of standards is the standards for a major variation. The first one is the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. Nothing in this proposed development leads me to believe that it would have anything adverse. If anything, it should have a positive impact on neighboring properties. In particular, the one thing that I did mention was the water runoff from an overly paved area to an area that is now retaining its own water, as well as just being a nicer, greener, lusher place, which would make other people feel good about going by this particular area. Number two, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. This was kind of covered off in the map amendment things. The things that were controversial have been through the idea that we would like to we would recommend a map amendment change. I think brings it into compliance with the zoning ordinance by providing housing, residential, in an area that was industrial. Evanston has seen its industrial decrease greatly over the last 50 years. Some of that has turned into retail, some of it has turned into housing, but that is the sort of stuff that Evanston is never going to. We should retain some of our industrial areas, but to retain the amount that we have just doesn't seem logical, because there really is not going to be a huge return of industrial to the city of Evanston, in my opinion. Number 3, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. This building does exist in its current state. The proposal is to increase the footprint a little bit on the building by providing some parking garages, the additional little wood shop, I don't remember, yoga studio, what else was in there, with the porte cochere that attaches it. But they really are kind of using this particular location and not greatly overbuilding it or anything like that, but really are just kind of using the property as it is. And so I think that standard is met. Number 4, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty is distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were carried out. Because they are working within a predefined footprint on the building, asking them to do a bunch of other stuff around that does seem like it would impose more than just an inconvenience to the developer. So I believe that standard is met. Number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon the desire to extract additional income, or if it is, there is a public benefit. Obviously, any development, the developer hopes will turn them some profit, otherwise they don't do it. But the fact is, to provide 7 additional housing units and to create a unique community within Evanston definitely seems like a public benefit to this, and I don't think that they're going to retire and become extremely wealthy off of this particular project. There seems to be a lot of thought, there seem to be jumping through a lot of hoops, and as Commissioner Halleck said, the ratio of amenities to housing seems really skewed to the fact that the amenities are taking up much more of the load than the actual residential. Number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. This particular building has been there for almost 100 years. They've bought this property. It kind of exists in this condition. They're not doing anything to create additional new problems for it. The one thing that they are doing is adding the outbuildings of the garages, but I think those are being done tastefully. They're being kept within setbacks. So it's not something that greatly concerns me, but not something I also feel that they are creating. They're not asking us for side yard setbacks on an extremely large lot or putting these garages right up on the sidewalk or anything like that. So I think they're being very sensible in the way they're doing it. Which kind of leads into number 7. The requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulations. Again, looking at this particular property, these are not oversized units. They're not greatly adding on to the footprint of the buildings. They actually are doing quite a bit to reach a nice balance between making a development that is a good living environment as well as maintaining a sustainability behind it as well. So I believe that standard is met. Is everyone in agreement with my finding on those standards? If so, I will ask if there is a motion to approve both of these together, both the map amendment and the major variation. I don't think staff had put any recommendations or anything in here, so.
Okay, with respect to 1611 Church Street, map amendment, that would be 23 PLND-0045 to remove the subject property from the West Evanston Overlay District. And the major variations, I believe that is 23 ZMJV-0047. I move that the land use and the 2 requested variations had to do with the orientation of the front entrances and allowing the detached accessory parking structures between the principal structure and the front yard line. I move that the Land Use Commission make a positive recommendation to the city council with respect to both.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Moved by Commissioner Lindberg, second.
Lindwall.
Lindwall, I'm merging your names. And seconded by Commissioner Westerberg. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Jones, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aravallo?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall?
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. So with 6 votes in favor and none against, the motion does carry, and it will move forward to City Council. And as I've told everyone else that you've heard, Melissa will work with you on exactly when you will be appearing before Council and any next steps that you need to be working with the city on. And good luck with your project. With that, we have concluded our business on the agenda items that we had. We now reach a point where we have communication. Does staff have anything to communicate to us?
Sure. So I don't have a presentation, at least not for this month. We'll definitely have more for next month, as we are expecting to get the existing conditions report and be able to provide some more information on the contents of that. I do want to give a little bit more information on the survey. We've got some general data that came from that. We received over 2,500 surveys. And I think we have about 98% was English. We had 8% that were Spanish surveys. We had a pretty decent spread of age range. I think the most responsive groups were between the ages of like 35 to 75, so mostly the working adults in Evanston. We have, again, I think I mentioned last time, the ward that had the most responses was the 3rd ward, but we also had, I think, was 6th, 7th, and 4th were fairly close behind that. We definitely saw a range of responses with regards to like ranking the priorities of what people were most concerned about. I think as could probably be expected, I think economic development was towards the top of that. Sustainability, health and wellness, housing, but not an extreme range. So there weren't any things that were just like completely at like 2%. So we are doing a little bit more with regards to analysis, and we'll be incorporating that into the existing condition report that, as the title says, really takes into account what's currently here in Evanston, some of the current plans that we have, the amenities and things like that. So next month will be when there'll be a little bit more robust of a presentation or discussion on what those contents are. As a update, another update, we did have a visioning workshop this past Saturday. That consisted of a number of different community members from Evanston. That was, I want to say, 4 or 5 hours worth of activities. So that we did provide a bit of a summary of what the process is, how we are anticipating, or how we anticipated the attendees being involved. Part of those activities included looking at some of the current development trends, or just trends in general, and then having each of the tables look at what trends they felt would impact Evanston, be it positive or negative, whether it would be lower impact or higher impact, and then taking those particular trends and doing a future scenario exercise. So a little bit more storytelling using those trends. And from that, we developed themes that we saw that were pretty common through each of the group's scenarios. and then began to draft a vision statement. So the vision statement is still going to be tweaked, but the intention is to still bring that out to the general Evanston community for some additional feedback and make sure that things are on the right track in that regard. So I know Chair Rogers was in attendance at that session. I don't know if you want to add anything to that regarding your
No,
experience.
not really, other than it was a nice cross-section. The thing that I was excited about was that there were, I don't know, a handful of high school kids that were involved. And I mean, they're the ones who are really going to be living this to fruition. I mean, in 20 years.
In this visioning session, were there representatives from all the wards?
I believe so. I'd have to look again at the list to be certain.
I think it's really important to keep that
'Cause we
in mind
definitely-
on all these
yeah.
things. Like if there's, another citizen outreach thing, survey, like how to get people from the wards that didn't respond. So,
I mean, I would say that I can't swear to it, but definitely I would say that a majority of the wards, if not all of the wards, were represented. I mean, I don't know where everybody lives in town, but the people that I knew at the meeting were representative of a number of different wards. And it was all over the city, from the 8th Ward to the 5th Ward to the 1st Ward. So it was very interesting, and it was interesting to work through kind of creating these scenarios. We were each given a task where it's like our particular table, we had to, something positive happens to Evanston in the next 20 years. And it could be anything from a major sporting event comes to town, or just kind of, dream up what it is. Money drops from the sky. That was one. That actually was a scenario that a table who had this same one did. They suddenly, it's like, we got this grant, a foundation's established. There's a whole think tank in Evanston about turning to a green economy, and how does that impact everything? There was another one had to do with, something horrible happens to Evanston. It could be a natural disaster. It could be something.
Rises 40 feet.
Exactly. And how do you respond to that? One group was kind of blue sky. Everything happens exactly when you want it to, exactly the way you think it should. And the other group, the last scenario was, we just do nothing. And what happens? And so it was kind of, we took it through the 20 years, and it was kind of an interesting thing to see where some of these scenarios played out. And that's where we started looking at, okay, well, what seem to be the common themes that come up through this? And I mean, things like climate change was one of those things that, because that's going to affect everybody everywhere. Housing was, affordable housing and just different types of housing stock and these sorts of things was another thing that came up. So it was an interesting day.
I just think affordability, across the board affordability is one of the major issues.
And we looked at like economic issues, we looked at governmental issues, we looked at housing issues. All of these were parts of our scenario of the different types of trends.
Are there more presentations at this point, or have you kind of moved into another phase of this plan?
So we are moving into or moved into the second phase, which is more with the vision statement and doing more of the future look into things and making that vision statement something that is presented and starting to think about recommendations that may be included as we're drafting both the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. There will be presentations and feedback that is asked for and ideas that are encouraged to be brought to city staff, council members, boards and commissions throughout. And I think also as part of this, there are different boards and commissions that have taken an interest in very particular aspects of the plan. So I do anticipate that there will be at least different recommendations or thoughts that are brought to staff and possibly just the Land Use Commission just in general that are about specific items. So like sustainability, parking,
I think having people from all the wards is important too, but also I think having different, I don't know, it's not types of people, different professions. Have developers, have teachers, have, students, of course, like you
Yes.
said.
And that was the thing about this group on Saturday.
But have the business community represented also.
It was a hand-picked group to represent all of the different things. And they made sure to seat us at tables where it wasn't like me and 20 of my friends and we're all going to say the same thing.
Right.
There are people who were challenging you about why you think something, or presenting different ideas behind the realities, where things should be going.
I've got one question. My thing is kind of capital improvements and infrastructure and stuff, and because ultimately we've got to be able to afford to move ahead. And one of the things that hasn't really, I don't know where it stands, but the replacement of the Civic Center and the police and fire, which are going to be super expensive capital improvement projects. Are those, have those two items filtered into this planning process at all?
We've definitely gotten comments from the general public about, or questions about what's going to happen or how that's going to be considered. And I think that the consultant has heard that directly as well. I do think with us having things like putting assets to work, I think we need to take a look at what the different timelines might be. Because I don't necessarily want things to hinge directly on Envision Evanston if there are plans in place to do something else. Right. So that's kind of a fine balance we're having to walk at this point.
Right.
And seeing,
and there are clearly decisions that'll have to be made that have really big financial implications for both, the city and probably some of the other taxing districts, as well. And, so I think that having those kinds of information on those sorts of things as you're moving into the visioning, I think, is probably important, so that, you don't suddenly decide that, yes, there's $1 billion coming down from heaven and we can spend it any way we want, because that's not likely to be the reality.
So Evanston is, we're sort of famous, or the council's famous for approving studies, and then nothing ever happens with the study. So my question is, I got wind of a RFP that went out, I don't think anything happened with it, for design of the plaza, right, directly south of the theaters, off of Church. It was
so adjacent to the 909 Davis building?
where the city is going to move their office. Yeah, anyway, it was an RFP to architects, and I heard about this, and then I think it just fizzled. But it was part of another study that I never even heard of.
The Evanston Thrive.
Was that what it is? I thought it was really a cool study, some cool ideas that come out of it, and I'm hoping that those other studies that we've done that, ad nauseum, are being shared with this group.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
we gave them the very long list of plans and studies that the city has done, that we're currently looking at, or currently actually implementing, because I know the economic development for Evanston Thrives in particular, they're actively already doing things that were suggested within that plan.
I'm not sure if that was the one, but it was about the downtown area.
Mm-hmm.
It's about all the business districts.
Yeah.
So it covers it covers a lot.
Yeah, we definitely gave them a lot of information to pour over.
Any other questions for staff? Anything else staff would like to share with us? At this point, we do have a section for public comment. If there's anybody in the room who would like to address the board on any issue regarding land use, I will note that the only people who are here are the last applicant who just wanted to stick around and enjoy our little discussion. So with that, we move to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We do stand adjourned until our June 12th meeting. We'll see you then. Thank you.